So, we have some more ideas, some more thoughts in regards to the Dylan Larkin trade conversation. I wanted to go to two sources, both Vancouver-based sources, because earlier yesterday on Canucks Central, the hosts on the show, Satyar Shah and Bick Nazar, they had Frank Seravalli on the program talking shop. And earlier on Friday, you also had on Donnie and Dolly, Elliotte Friedman make an appearance on their program over here. So, two NHL insiders were brought on to Vancouver television/radio programs to talk about various things, and both of these guys did speak about the Dylan Larkin situation. Let's dive into what both of the perspectives are and where we could see Dylan Larkin, Detroit Red Wings captain, get traded to, and for what? Let's start out with what Elliotte Friedman said on Donnie and Dolly. Now, big shout out over to Canucks News Summaries for going out and summarizing what was talked about over here. There is a pretty intriguing segment that was brought up in regards to Larkin. This is what Friedman says. He had the Wild and the Panthers as potential Dylan Larkin destinations, but not the Golden Knights. However, it makes sense that Vegas is on Larkin's list. Friedman says the Red Wings are upset, but they have to be practical. It's just time. They'll have to send him somewhere where he thinks he can win. It'll be really hard for the Red Wings to acquire a package that helps them win now. They could turn around and trade the package because Stevie Y and the Wings, they want their playoff drought to end. Friedman also thinks this will be a really active summer because this won't be the only trade request that we hear about. Now, I'd say that's a pretty reasonable take by Elliotte Friedman, not really going out there and saying anything crazy or outrageous, but essentially just giving us a scoop that I think we can all comfortably say is probably correct here. The Red Wings are upset that the Dylan Larkin situation has gotten to this point. They're going to have to trade him, but the question all of a sudden is, what direction do you take this trade? We know the Wings have been desperate to claw back into the playoffs. We know trading Larkin really reduces the chances that they'll be able to do that next year. So, do you take the bullet and say, all right, well, if we lose out on Larkin, JT Compher is our number one center, our team is going to be ass, and so we've just got to rebuild and, give Mrtka of the captaincy, let Raymond and all them take this team into the next generation? Or is there a move to be made where Larkin ends up getting traded, but somehow the Red Wings look better on paper than if they just kept Larkin, who, by the way, is a disgruntled asset? This is where we dive into what Frank Seravalli spoke about on Canucks Central yesterday. Because what Satyar Shah and Seravalli bring up is the list that Helene St. James wrote about. You have the three teams that Dylan Larkin would supposedly be okay to get traded to. Those three teams are the Minnesota Wild, the Vegas Golden Knights, and the Florida Panthers. Now, Satyar Shah on the program actually brings up Florida's 9th overall draft pick as potential trade fodder for the Detroit Red Wings. Hey, would Florida be interested in trading this draft pick away for Larkin? And on the surface, that looks like a great idea, right? The Red Wings would get themselves a high draft pick. The Florida Panthers, they got no need for this. The Panthers got 9th overall because Barkov was injured and Bobrovsky sucked. They don't really have anything useful that they can do with the 9th overall pick as back-to-back Stanley Cup champions who are in their cup contention window now. So trade this draft pick away, get somebody that can help you out like Dylan Larkin, and everybody's happy, right? Satyar Shah brings that up in the program, but Frank Seravalli goes out there and straight up says the contrary. He says that he doesn't actually think that 9th overall draft pick from Florida is the best asset available to Steve Yzerman in said Larkin trade talks. Instead, Seravalli on this podcast episode radio hit labels Minnesota Wild goalie Jesper Wallstedt as a much bigger get for Detroit. There's a package to be had here, and Seravalli proposes something along the lines of Wallstedt plus Danila Yurov, who is a pretty great center out of the Minnesota Wild system, plus one of those defensemen that the Wild have as well, either a Jonas Brodin or a Middleton or somebody of that nature, to balance out the cap and to give Detroit some more structure on the back end. This is actually a trade idea that I think makes the Red Wings look better if you were able to pull it off. And we know that the Minnesota Wild are contenders for Dylan Larkin, not just because it was reported that Larkin wants to go to Minnesota. Oh yeah, great. His good buddy Quinn Hughes got sent over to the Wild, and now Larkin is like, yeah, I want to go there too. But it's also the idea that Minnesota is fully going all in. They traded away their top prospects in Buyum and Ogren. They traded away a top center in Rossi. They traded away a first-round pick, all to get Quinn Hughes for 2 years, essentially. And now they're going to be fighting for Dylan Larkin against the back-to-back Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers squad and the team that could potentially win the Cup this year in Vegas. So a package of Wallstedt plus Yurov plus Brodin, if you just wanted to toss that out there, and maybe even a draft pick, that actually seems like a package the Minnesota Wild could put together and send over Steve Yzerman's way. Would the Red Wings be interested in sending Larkin to another Atlantic team in Florida? I don't know. That doesn't really sound like something Stevie Y would be into. Vegas, also, I mean, they have so many centers, so you could debate whether or not that's actually a realistic possibility from their perspective. But if you look at a Red Wings team that lacks Dylan Larkin, but you have a legitimately solid goalie of the future option in Wallstedt, you have a center that could potentially break out and have that top six capability. Danila Yurov is only 22 years old, and this season for the Minnesota Wild, he had scored himself 27 points in 73 games. Doesn't seem super impressive, but then you realize, hey, wait a minute, this guy was so young and he just came over from Russia. There's a lot to like out of Yurov. And then, hey, we're always talking about how the Red Wings discourse sucks, right? Why not add a Brodin? Why not add a Middleton? Why not add somebody that can actually provide some decent value on the back end? If this is the package, I can understand why you think this can improve the team. Larkin, by himself, is a great player. We understand what his pros and cons are. He's the captain, he's a leader, he's a dog. But if you're forced to trade him away, would this not be one of the best packages you can get, especially if you're trying to keep the team competitive? I mean, don't get me wrong, the 9th overall pick from the Florida Panthers would be awesome to acquire if you're Steve Yzerman and the Detroit Red Wings, but how many gosh darn draft picks are you going to be able to get before the fan base up and away betrays you in the face of the public eye? We're already seeing some angst with the additions of these guys that the Red Wings have already drafted. You talk about the Kaspers, the Bronseg Newgards, the Carter Bears, Axel Sandin Pellikka. Okay, sure, some of these guys look a little bit better than others, but how many game breakers have the Red Wings drafted since Lucas Raymond? You could say Emmett Finney, but still, that guy's 7th round. He's just breaking in. He's not a guy that helps move the needle in a game-breaking, game-winning type of way just yet. Is he ever going to get to that point? I don't know. Is Finney ever going to be a Raymond, a DeBrincat, a Larkin caliber player? I don't know. Is Danila Yurov going to be that? I don't know. But Jesper Wallstedt, this is a guy that could potentially take over games, and he was Minnesota's starter in the playoffs this season for a reason. It's either him or it's either Gustafsson, it's what have you. You could talk about Sebastian Cossa and the entire situation regarding him. In fact, you know what? I want to make a video later in today's show about Cossa because there is some uncovered info that we need to dive into on that front as well. But for now, you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel, firstly, about Elliotte Friedman's update that the Red Wings are upset at how this Larkin thing has played out? What are your thoughts on Frank Seravalli's trade proposal, talking about Jesper Wallstedt or a Yurov being included in a Dylan Larkin trade return package? What do you think makes more sense? 9th overall from Florida, Jesper Wallstedt from Mini. Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.